Thanks for tuning in to the Women's Vibrancy Code, a podcast dedicated to helping women move from exhausted to energized, balance their hormones, and feeling turned on by their life, their lover, and themselves. I'm your host, Maraya Brown. I'm a Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, keynote speaker, and self-made entrepreneur. I'm the founder of my signature program, the Women's Vibrancy Code. So sit back, relax, and let's chat about your energy, hormones, libido, and embracing your feminine power. Oh, and you might want to have pen and paper to take some notes on some of these episodes. So welcome back to the Women's Vibrancy Code podcast. For those of you that are listening, I'm here today with Amber Duggar. So Amber is the creator of Profit for Keeps. And today we wanted to talk about health and prosperity, which digs into the energy of receiving what we desire. And it was really fascinating. And just so you know, all of her links and social media, and she's got a free offer for everyone. That's all in the description and in the show notes. And we're going to have a great conversation. But before we push record, I was about to push record, and Amber said, "Wait a minute. I feel like something's turning for you. Are you okay?" And I went, "Wow, that's a great question. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff turning." And really, for me, what it boils down to, and it feels relevant to share because I think it's going to kind of color the conversation that Amber and I have around prosperity and health is, and I can relate to this through the lens of health. Often people will come to me and they feel like either I don't know where to turn. I'm feeling tired. I feel like my hormones are out of whack. I'm burnout. I'm not sleeping. I can't lose the weight. I'm feeling anxious, sad, whatever it may be. And I don't know who to trust. I don't know where to turn. I've gone to my provider and they've said everything looks fine, or they've handed me a prescription. And on the other side is I just had a client hire me, and she had 2 naturopaths, an acupuncturist, a primary care provider, an endocrinologist, an OBGYN, a urologist. And she felt completely overwhelmed with all of the bombardment of feedback, and some of which felt contradictory. Mm-hmm. And so what I was saying to Amber is, as a CEO in this last year, I feel like I've gotten a taste of that with bringing in amazing inner counsel, but then the people that I am trusting in to kind of help lead my way, because I'm a great healthcare provider, but being a CEO is very new and fresh. I'm only 3.5 years in. And then it feels like, well, wait a minute, there's contradictory advice and I don't know. And there's so many different variables. And of course I need to do my inner work on who I be and my mindset. And of course there's all these agencies that I can hire. And the next thing I know, every time I turn around, there's some new bright, shiny thing that I can purchase that's going to help me to the wealth that I'm longing for, help me attract the clients. And in the last year, it's felt more complicated than ever, while the marketplace is changing and there's ebbs and flows in people's buying behavior. And during a pandemic, when everyone was inside and accustomed to working so hard and fine being on Zoom and really prioritizing their health, and now it's a very different feeling where people are out in the world and they want to gather in person more, and they're sick and tired of group coaching calls on Zoom. So before I read your bio, Amber, anything else you want to add to this conversation we had before we popped on?
Well, I think it's just, first of all, beautiful that you're sharing this, and also I think quite relevant because I think many of us are feeling this right now. And what comes to mind as you're sharing this is, we were talking about balancing the masculine and feminine energies, whether it be in health or be in money. And that's definitely what we focus on with Profit for Keeps and Profit for Joy, this concept of balancing those two. And I think we can go way too far on one side. And then, of course, it's not balanced. So, from a health perspective, doing all these different things, but then almost feeling the complication itself as an ailment. And I think it can also be the same with money when we're looking at all these different things and overcomplicating it because we feel our intention is so beautiful is that we don't want to feel stuck or we don't want to feel frustrated with it. But at the same time, it always comes back to our inner wisdom paired with discernment. And I think that's where we tend to, I think, sometimes get confused in that area. And it wasn't until I learned the concept of discernment and how it's part of manifestation that it really helped me understand the true balance of it, which is we are meant to be able to use discernment to see, does this feel good? Does this make sense to me? And use it to accelerate our process, but also knowing that the quiet has a very beautiful purpose and listening to our inner wisdom and coming back to that. And when we're hearing and feeling this overwhelm, removing a lot of the noise so that we can hear that beautiful, soft
Mhm.
voice within us. Um, but yeah, I think that the correlations are just so relevant right now for so many of us as we're
Yep.
moving into the new year.
Yep. And as we're recording this, the podcast, I don't know when it will go live yet, but we're recording this and we're right in the midst of Hanukkah. It's before Christmas. We're in December.
Mhm.
And so there's also, there's a lot moving in this time, and it brings to light
Mhm.
the rhythms of our menstrual cycle, the rhythms of our season. And there's like this balancing point. I don't know about you, Amber, but I often say I'm a coach and I'm a mentor.
Yeah.
So I'm a coach in that I'll ask questions and really help someone dig into their own personal knowing
Mhm.
and honor our intuition and honor feeling our body. But I'm also a mentor because I'm going to give you like clear steps. Here, here's some personalized supplementation. Here's some steps to take so you can go, oh my gosh, okay, I have some clear direction. And I imagine what I'm feeling from you, Amber, is your work with individuals. It's kind of the same. There's this balancing point of helping them find their own true North Star or inner compass and inner knowing, but also going here. Here is some very clear direction that's tried and proven and will work. And
Mhm.
here are the steps to start with.
100%. I
Mhm.
and I think you really described it perfectly, but the balance between the masculine and feminine, because the feminine piece of it, that listening to yourself, but then using that discernment of listening to individuals who have had experience and our expertise in certain areas can help you navigate the right way. So you can use your intuition paired with that expertise. And I think that is the balance right there.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, let me read your bio. We didn't get there yet. So Amber Duggar is the founder of Profit for Keeps, host of Profit for Joy TV, international speaker, and the CEO of Amber Duggar Coaching. She helps entrepreneurs around the world become permanently profitable, which results in significant increases in both personal and business net worth with a system and strategy that is simple and takes less than 10 minutes a day. And I think what's also very interesting, Amber, for you in particular, which is so fun to bring you onto this podcast, is you were a health coach.
hmm Yep. I never thought I would touch money again with a 10-foot pole when I left corporate. I started out as a finance and business graduate and moved into corporate finance and then nonprofit finance and then government contracting. I worked for the State Department, had a top secret clearance. I did all of that stuff. And then I was like, out of here. Because there's just, I think really looking back, what I was observing was an incredible amount of ego in this industry
Mm,
and an incredible amount of overcomplication and unnecessary action. So there was a lot of hustle. There was a lot of perception of, well, if you come in at 7, but then other people come in at 9 and you're wanting to leave at 4, they look at you as not working hard enough. Or, I will never forget, I remember eating pizza off of my desk at 2 in the morning and then expected to be back at work at 8. So it was just this incredibly toxic environment. And I think also it was very clear my path was not meant to be doing that. I was working, I had just recently switched positions. I was on site in Washington, D.C., a couple blocks away from the White House. It was actually a red zone where we had to have gas masks underneath our desks because if anything happened, no one was going to come and help us because it was so close to the Capitol. And I remember thinking, I don't like that feeling. I don't like feeling like my safety is at risk. And then honestly, I was working for someone who was a very beautiful gift to me in that she was the exact person I needed to be around to know I was not meant to be there. And
Mm.
that it was the day that I realized I didn't have a gas mask and the facilities director said, "Oh, you should have one." And he walks me into her office and says, "Can we get you a gas mask or Amber a gas mask?" And she said, "She's just a contractor. I'm not going to get her one." And I remember thinking, I am a human being. I am a human
Yeah.
being. And this is just an example of just how clear it was that I was not meant to do this work. And it would have been a federal government position I would have moved into, and I would have honestly been set financially for sure. But from an emotional and soul perspective, it was absolutely not what I was supposed to do. And this was a year after I had a pretty significant bike accident that I think was the biggest blessing of all, because that allowed me to start thinking about what do I really want to be doing? And that's when I heard a podcast about health coaching. And then I enrolled with the Roth money that I had put aside for this health coaching school. And over that year, I was working full time and also doing the health coaching for 30 hours a week. And it wasn't until I was in this position that I realized, because I was taking my 1 hour exactly, because if I was even a second late, she would document it. It was amazing. She just had it out for me. And I do believe that it was so extreme. And it was because the universe was putting her there to guide me to what I was meant to do in life, which was not that. And so, again, I have so much gratitude for her because she did play such a significant role in giving me confirmation that I was meant to leave corporate life. And so I left after graduating health coaching school and started seeing clients, and then moved to Bali, Indonesia very shortly after that, and lived there for 6 months. And it was there that I was noticing the significant gap between individuals who took that courageous step to leave the corporate cycle and the conditioned idea of what we're meant to do, especially with our generation, and also not having any foundation to really work off of when it comes to managing money. And I think that because it's become so overcomplicated and we don't really have a clear special place for cash flow management, which is really just paying ourselves and running a profitable, sustainable business. We have bookkeeping that looks backwards. We have accountants, that's all about taxes, but we don't have something to help us in this area. And at the same time, that work is a conduit of, or a gateway of our relationship with money and what is actually perhaps either accelerating our ability to receive or stopping us from making any money. And so I was noticing all of that. And that's when I started to move back into money, but from a more holistic point of view to really look at both sides. Um, and it's been an amazing journey ever since
Mm.
then.
Mm. So there's a few things that I heard. One kind of backing up was this idea of discernment as part of manifestation.
Mm-hmm.
So to get clear with what is it we're wanting to attract in health, in wealth, in love,
Mm-hmm.
and also that balancing point of discernment with who am I being and am I allowing for space and quiet to listen within. And what is it? Abraham Hicks says, state the intention and then pay attention. Like,
Mm-hmm.
are
Right.
we stating the intention and it's right there in front of us and we're just not seeing it? And then this health journey, and wow, what a background. And to go from, having to clock in and clock out to a lifestyle right now where you have total freedom and you've moved and you lived in Bali. I mean, so cool. But then there's also this nuts and bolts piece of you that's not bookkeeping, not accounting, but let's really talk about money systems
Mhm.
that balance the energy of it and who we be and our relationship with receiving, as well as how do we keep track? I'm curious, what are your thoughts on profit first as a model? Because you have some background there. Is that still something that you're kind of in broad strokes in agreement with?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have a completely different perspective to the system, and that's why my system is called something different. And I was one of their first coaches to become a Profit First professional. So for those that are listening that haven't heard of Profit First, it's simply a different way of looking at money, similar to this whole idea of, set the intention and then pay attention. I would say, add to that switch perspective because I can have this candle and I'm holding up a candle that looks like there's absolutely nothing on it. But then if I turn it, I can see that there's writing all over on this label. And so just a simple moving to the other side of it gives me a different perspective. And so I think that I got I got lost in what I was saying though.
You were talking about profit first and
Thank
a
you.
different, yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So with Profit First, when I read the book, I was actually in Bali and I was really being influenced by my business mentor at the time, my coach, of moving back into money. And I had significant resistance to it. I was like, no, I left that world. I do not. I get PTSD from listening to a Xerox machine in our bamboo co-working space. Like, I don't want to do it. And she said, "Oh my gosh, Amber, but you have such a different perspective on this, and like what you're doing is so different." And it truly is, I think when you take profit first, I love the concept of it. And I think the way it's written in the book is amazing for someone who has a brick and mortar business. But when
Mm.
it comes to an online business, or a business where we really are setting that intention first versus thinking of it a way to make a living. And I think most of who I've come across in the circles that we've shared, Maraya, have been individuals who are really looking more at the creating the life that will really fulfill them and allow them to expand and inspire others. And those impact-driven entrepreneurs have a different perspective. It's
Mm.
much more visionary and looking at what can be created? How can we make a positive influence and change? And we look at it from that perspective and then reverse engineer not only a revenue goal that's more practical, grounded, but also backed by what it is that we really desire to do, then that's where things start to come together. So I do use Profit First, but it's more components of Profit First, so that we don't use all the bank accounts. We don't do micro adjustments. We don't do profit assessments in the way that they teach it. We have a different system where it's looking more about, and this really ties into why I do it this way, was when I was in Bali, I was in a health coach mastermind, and there was two pieces of advice that was given to me. One was how much money I should be making a month. And so the mastermind was, I think, advertising around you can make $5,000 a month as a health coach. And then my health coaching school was telling me to start off seeing clients at $199 a month. Now, if I had taken those two very well-intentioned pieces of advice back in 2015, there's no way I'd be here right now. I would be in so much debt and I would have completely lost faith in myself and I would have thought it was me. And that's what breaks my heart is there are so many people I've talked to who haven't yet reached where they believe they would be and think that it's something to do with them or something to do with like what they're providing. And, that may be part of it, right? We all are doing our own to work on ourselves and to expand and to grow and all of that. But looking back at that moment, I knew living in DC and just from having a financial background and knowing I was going to now pay FICA taxes and all these other things, I knew I needed $8,000 a month. So that's a $3,000 difference. Just imagine that over the course of a year, that's $36,000 that I would be in debt already in 12 months. The
Mhm.
second thing is if you take 8,000 And I'm going to do it right now and divide it by 199. That is 40 clients. 40 clients.
Where does the
Could
time
you
come
imagine?
from?
Right. And they're talking one-on-one, right? They're not saying group for 40 people. We're
Yeah.
talking one-on-one, and they wanted it weekly and client notes and all this stuff. So this is a 60-hour work week. So I'd be doing a 60-hour work week and be $36,000 in debt by the end of the year. Now, just a simple shift of changing that to $650 a month, which would be 12 clients and 8,000 instead of 5,000, I'm now profitable, I'm now sustainable, and I can grow from that foundation.
Not to mention the fact that you're addressing your own health by not
Exactly.
working 60 hours a week so that you can be the example to the clients that you're serving.
100%. I mean, can you imagine trying to work with someone who's working with 39 other people? One,
Yeah.
you're not going to you're definitely not going to get the space and the beautiful experience that one deserves when
Hmm.
investing in themselves like that. But also, you're right. I mean, it's not sustainable in any way, shape, or form. And so this is where I felt so called to ensure that the next generation wasn't going through this, because I do think we are moving much more into an entrepreneurial world, whether it's working for an entrepreneur and not having so many big conglomerates, but actually having micro niched services for people that as we continue to expand in awareness of what we are meant to be learning in this lifetime. And I think that
Mm.
that's where we can
Just to
really,
take a pause there, I love what I heard because often when we look at the buyouts by big corporations,
Mhm,
there can be this kind of, for me, intimidation and almost sadness that
mhm,
there are some industries that feel like it's becoming a monopoly. And what I heard through my lens is it's the small and medium sized businesses that
mhm,
are really impacting change at a grassroots level, but also a human level, and keeping people employed and keeping communities uh, up uplifted. And so just to really like pause on that, that those of us that are running small to medium sized businesses, I mean, how do we define that? Maybe 100,000 a year up to $10 million a year. Is that fair to say that's a small to
yeah,
medium sized
yeah,
business?
absolutely.
That range for those of us carrying the torch, blazing the trail, staying clear with our mission and our vision and our values.
Mhm,
Not only is it important, but I'm hearing you say you think it's the future of industry.
100%. I
That's
do.
big. Okay.
And I think that anyone listening that feels like someone comes to them and says, it's your responsibility to scale, it's your responsibility to impact so many more people. Unless that's your truth, unless you feel that and you already know that, and it's just a confirmation, stay true to what you're doing and listen to what you're meant to be doing, because we can have the most incredible, joyous, expansive life working with 10 to 30 clients a year, for example, making a really good income.
Yep.
And there are so many people I know that make incredibly good income that no one's ever heard of. And it's because that their particular growth or their particular thing that they want to learn isn't related to that person. And I think that when we can think of it this way, then we can start to see the intrinsic effect as well. Because just imagine, if we're working with a group of individuals, let's say 15 people a year, and we're deeply impacting their perspective and their ability to grow and expand, that high vibrational energy already is affecting people wherever they are. So if you're working with 15 people, I see this vision of just like this ripple effect of like expansion. And then those individuals are affecting others. So it's like your ripple effect is still so great, even if you're directly touching, 15 people a year.
Yes, 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 yeah. And this has been my experience personally. If you would have asked me 3.5 years ago, I thought I wanted to be a household name in the world of women and their hormones. And over the time, what I've realized is it is so fun to be working with the game changers in the world who are, many of them, household names. They have a tremendous ripple effect.
Mhm.
And I don't necessarily have to have a large following, but I get to be behind the scenes and supporting them foundationally. And
Mhm.
it's so fulfilling. And it allows the time and space for me to do what I love and be present with my family, because I had to really get clear with what is it actually, what if I put my ego aside,
Mhm.
what is it actually that I desire? I'm also remembering before we pushed record, there was, in the context of all these different conversations we're having all at the same time, is there's this balance of feminine and masculine, receiving, push, pull, go, receive, quiet, loud. There's also acknowledging the rhythms. I talk about it through our menstrual rhythms, our seasonal rhythms, but then also you were talking about the rhythms of business and
Mhm.
the expansion and contraction. I mean, just think about breath. We breathe in, we breathe out. I'm curious if you would touch on that. I'm hearing so far you work with individuals that are willing to increase their prices. But and if there's anything else to add there, but then also, can you speak to the rhythms of those of us that are the small to medium sized entrepreneurs who are passionate about what we do? We're wanting to create impact at a more intentional and concentrated level, but also the rhythms that happen with that.
Mm. Gosh, we could be here all day. I love this question.
Mm-hmm.
So, so many things have come to me, but I'll start with the business cycle because I think that's a really important component. But then I would really love to talk about not only the women, like the hormonal cycle, but also the phases of life as a woman. And I think how we discredit a lot of the wisdom that comes with menopause. So I want to touch on that too, but I'll
So
start with the
good.
business cycle. Okay, so with the
I
business
feel like
cycle.
I'm a kid in a candy shop.
Oh, okay. So a lot of times, especially, I mean, I know you attract so many incredible, driven and high, like individuals who are just really visualizing big impact. What comes with that too can be some evidence, or at least for me in my own personal story, I carried perfectionism for a long time. And that was something that I learned actually during my bike accident, how it served me and also how it could no longer serve me. And so part of that is seeing that success, you want it to look like this. You want to always have it just to be getting better and better and better and better. And from a perspective of learning and growth, it is like this. We just don't see it that way sometimes because we're feeling these pauses or these areas where we feel like, oh, this was harder this time around, and what's going on? What am I doing wrong? Or how is the change in the industry working? But a healthy business cycle looks like this.
For
And
those of you that are listening on the podcast, she's making, like, how would you describe that shape?
like an up and down, rolling, like going up a hill, down a hill, up a hill, down a hill,
Yeah.
line. So like a wavy line. I'm thinking for whatever reason, because it's the holiday season, those like candies that look like like this that kind of are, I never ate them because I'm not a big sugar person, but like it looks like peppermint kind of going up and down. That's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so looking at that, and when we have a year where either we're not growing in revenue, or maybe we have a year where we're making less revenue than previous years, we can immediately go into a space of thinking, and maybe these are mostly inner thoughts, but just thoughts of what am I doing wrong? Or why is this so difficult this year? What's going on? Why is this different? And it's actually a really beautiful sign of a healthy business because we are meant to go through higher years and lower years. And the lower years allow us, when we see it from this perspective, a little bit more space to start to reflect and ensure that we are still aligned with our design, that we're still aligned with our soul's purpose and our mission, and also that everything, because everything's always changing. The only constant is change. And so it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. And those businesses that really embrace this idea of this is our time to reflect are the ones that remain really incredibly impactful and sustainable and all of those things.
So good.
So
Go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead.
It's the same with the menstrual rhythm. I think of our quote unquote
Mhm.
PMS week, our luteal phase, is the time when our inner critic, our inner intuition is that much more strong.
Yes.
And if we just expect ourselves to perform the same, be the same, feel the same, and not allow the irritability to bubble and listen into it,
Mhm.
not allow that inner voice that's saying, I don't want to go to the party. I don't want to host the thing. I want to get quiet and stay in my pajamas and journal and go inside and feel. Like that is an important part of these rhythms. And what I'm hearing is they can be year-long rhythms in the midst of business, and then also chapters of motherhood and postpartum and marriage and perimenopause and puberty and menopause. If we simply expect the trajectory to feel at the same angle and the same rhythm and the same frequency and the same trajectory, I think we're kidding ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. And it's also completely understandable if you're thinking that, because that is what we have been conditioned to believe.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's where I think we're in such an amazing space right now to have this ability for us to have this conversation. You're in a completely different part of the country than I am. We're reaching people all over the world, and we're able to have this massive reconnection. We've
Mm-hmm.
had so much separation for so long, and now we're in this stage of reconnecting. I get chills as I say that.
I did too.
And it's a really beautiful thing because we can start to take everyone's individual experiences and start to make some really incredible awareness and conclusion of how these are all correlate, and really remove a lot of this guilt and shame that I think many women especially, but all people really do carry in their tissue, in their body. And I think that we're in a space right now where we can be releasing an incredible amount by forgiving ourselves for anything that we feel we should have been doing or we should be at this point. And I keep using the word should on purpose because anytime we hear ourselves say that word, we know that there's a piece of forgiveness that's also probably going to be
Mm.
really helpful for our future, because I think that we're experiencing this incredible surge of block of creative energy, and it's serving us to be aware that the creative energy is present. And I think that as more women, because this is what's so fascinating. I was reading this the other day. So I was talking to my good friend Kate Northrup, and her mother has done a ton of, research on women's
I have
health.
two of her mother's books on the shelf behind me.
Okay, amazing. Do you have the
Yeah.
wisdom of menopause up there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So there's
Oh,
an
cool.
excerpt in there on her fibroid story, and it's in the beginning of the book. I
This
have
is the
it
book that she's referring to.
on. Yeah, and Kate suggested actually that I read that excerpt of it. And so I was reading it, and she pointed out that, just in 1900, women expected age was 40.
Mm.
So very few women went through menopause. Very few. I mean, at 40, you're not really going through menopause yet. Now, only 120 years later, our expected age is 80. And so we're now, like, I don't know if she said this specifically, but this is what I downloaded when I read it. that there is this massive surge, and it started with women being born in the 70s and 80s that we're now in this space of perimenopause where we are truly accessing some significant wisdom. And that wisdom is really to help elevate consciousness, I believe. And so when we're in this space and recognizing that not only is that luteal phase so incredibly beautiful and important for our journey as we move into our soul's purpose, but that the menopause phase is also this incredible experience to give us so much clarity of what we're meant to be doing to help the world as we move into these wisdom years. And I was just watching last night the Apple original, I think it's called, I can't think of it right now, but it's about the news show. You know, I'm talking about Good Morning something.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Um, it's kind of a spinoff of what really happened on the Today Show, and that's how it started. And then they now have this whole new storyline. It's really interesting. But the mother of the CEO of the conglomerate of this Good Morning America type show, she said very frustrated. She was suppressing her anger. She was doing the dishes. She was an incredibly intelligent woman. And her son could not put aside his ego, and she could have helped him tremendously with this big deal and merger they were doing. And she said something like, you know, our wisdom is so wasted.
Mm,
And it really hit me because I feel like right now, the more that we can really look at how we are moving into a space where there are more and more women getting incredible amounts of clarity, it's it ties back in with money. And I think that I see that with this process that we go through of really helping individuals see exactly the main things that you really need to know, not all the extra BS and complication that we have really created in this industry, but that clarity gives us so much empowerment to allow us to really step into our wisdom without contaminated time thinking about money. And so I think there's this really big correlation here. And I think that's why more and more individuals are really just craving clarity, and they don't really know that it's even possible to do that with money. But I think that that as we're having these conversations and recognizing that it's actually no longer taboo, if we decide it's no longer taboo to talk about money, to talk about perimenopause, to talk about women's health, because it's been so suppressed for so long and it's time for a change.
mhm. I heard you say contaminating our time by thinking about money.
Mm.
There's so much about that that I'm like, whoa. I'm making the assumption that you want people to think about their money and what they're wanting to attract. But then I'm also hearing that we can contaminate our time. Can you elaborate? What do you mean by that?
Mhm. So someone asked me a few months ago, we were doing a really beautiful launch and had a lot of different affiliate partners doing lives and things like that. And so I loved it. It was so fun. I had no idea what they were going to ask me, and I would jump on for 15 minutes. And one person asked me a question that I had never been asked before. And she said, I'm so excited to hear, what is your routine around money? And I had to think about that for a second. And I said, I don't have a routine around money. And she said, wait, what? I said, no, I barely think about it. And the reason I barely think about it is because it's a conduit of my intention, meaning it's the resource. And that is a beautiful thing, but it's not what I focus on. What I focus on is my intentions. What I focus on are the practical masculine sides of things that I know are going to help me continue to use discernment. That's really the practical stuff, the revenue goal, the profit first percentages, the forecasting, the organization of cash as it's coming into the business. That's all the discernment piece. It's giving me data that I can use to make decisions, but it's much more about thinking from a perspective of how can I touch as many hearts as possible today?
Mm.
And so it's not about thinking about the money. And I think a lot of times fear and worry definitely contaminate our time. And I think that most of the time, because there is so little understanding, rightly so, because the educational and financial industry have absolutely failed us in that department. There's so little understanding that it creates this elusive fear due to not really understanding it. And, that concept that anything that's unfamiliar is uncomfortable is maximized in this area because we immediately think, well, we need to go to experts for this. Most of the experts aren't experts in this. They may have a degree. They may,
Yeah.
just saying.
I'm thinking through the lens of health. Like
Exactly. I mean, they are so
everybody's
correlated.
become the health expert
Exactly.
online. Hire me. It's like, ah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where the value of integrity, those that are born with it, and I say that specifically because I do believe that we all carry different values for a reason because it serves our journey and our purpose and what we're meant to learn. So I don't think that there's actually any hierarchy of values. However, those that are born with the top value of integrity, recognize that and
Mm.
are very careful to compartmentalize what they know and what they don't know. And there's that fine line, especially in the coaching world. And it's sad because coaching, I think, is one of the most fantastic, phenomenal things one can experience. But there are so many people who have experienced really poor coaching environments where that integrity hasn't been in place. And
Yeah.
so it's really tainted the industry as a whole. But I think that when we're looking like you were saying, this correlation between health and wealth, there's also the same thing in the financial space. There are some incredible experts in the financial space. And then there are also, just like with health, so many that use their credentials and they don't have the slightest clue of what's necessary, what's best for the client that they're working with. And
Yeah.
that's where it's very frustrating because I think there are so many people that want so much to feel this clarity and feel this, lowering of overwhelm when it comes to money. But then they're working with someone who just doesn't put them in the right direction. So then again, they feel, oh, it must be me. I'm just not good with money. And I was working with she's been in my business almost a year now. And I'm so excited because we were in a mastermind together. And she's actually a holistic nutritionist. So she has a significant health background. But she just found these concepts so like they this touched her soul. And about a month ago, she said to me, I finally understand why you are always saying everyone is good with money, and I'm holding that belief for you. Because she says that's what we're really doing here. We are just maintaining that belief and maintaining that vision that we all have the capability to understand this. And it's really the belief that's lacking a lot of the time. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, you don't know my situation, like I am definitely not good with this, or I don't understand this, I would just say, just keep this as a seed that's planted that I actually believe that you are. You really are. And it may take multiple times of coming back and looking at it from different perspectives, but we are all inherently designed to use this as a resource for our intentions. And it's really just a conduit of our intentions, like Lynn Twist from The Soul of Money talks about. It's a great book. Um, and so when we look at it from that perspective and we take away all the noise, we can reduce the amount of time that we're spending worrying or in fear. And that's what I mean by contaminated time. And I think of it as a concept. I heard this from a business, I think her name is Jenny it's Shih, I believe. She's a business coach. When I first started, she was my business coach's mentor at the time. And she talked about this thing of 100 units of time. And her goal was to spend as little of those 100 units in fear or worry because it was contaminated. And I thought that was such a great concept because
Mhm.
we all have the same unit of time. So the more that we can really spend it in joy and embracing that and not feeling guilty that we're feeling the joy, that's where I think we're really going to start to see some big change.
Oh, so good. Um, there's so much to this, and I imagine that everyone is listening, who is listening is leaning in, saying, more, please. And of course, I have more questions, and there's so much that we can dig into. And I'm also aware of time. With a couple minutes left, I'm curious, Amber, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? Any last parting words that feel unsaid, for your own self, if it feels like there's something else you want to say, or if you have a feeling that I need to hear something or the listeners need to hear something, just to make sure that there's space to fill
Well,
in the puka, as the Hawaiian word is puka, fill in the hole.
ooh, is that where that comes from? I didn't know that word. Puka.
Puka, yeah, it's a hole. Or like a puka shell is a shell that has a hole through it. A puka is a hole.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Because I love that tea, the puka tea. So
Yeah.
that made me think of it.
I think that that's not Hawaiian though. Puka tea is not, it's not a Hawaiian
Oh,
version. Yeah.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to now. I'm a 9 fact finder in Colby if anyone does Colby. So I'm like
Okay.
now wanting to go and research that this very second.
Yeah. 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 Puka.
Okay. So, oh, there's just there's so much I could say, but first of all, I'll say if anyone does want to connect with me, the best place is YouTube. Actually, I do a YouTube channel there, and it's under Amber Duggar, and you can find me. And we also do regular master classes, so you can sign up at amberduggar.com/masterclass and learn more about our perspective there. Um, but I would say for anyone listening right now, we are in a time of significant change. And when we have change occurring, we can either be resistant to it or we can surrender to it. And this idea of surrender does not mean being complacent. And I think that's where many driven individuals can kind of, I know I did for a long time, dismiss this idea of surrender. Like, what? Because I think that when we think of it from a perspective of complacency, of course we don't want to become complacent because that means we're no longer utilizing discernment. But there's so much beauty in shifting our perspective and reminding ourselves, and this is what I do for myself every day. I remind myself that everything, whether it's perceived as good or bad, is happening for me. And I
Hmm.
offer that to anyone listening that if you're going through a hard time or you're going through a chapter where it feels like, oh, this just, I don't know how this is serving me right now. Just keep the perspective or the space for that knowledge to come in at some point later. There's not a moment in my life that I can look back and not think of how that served me in some way or another. Um, and for the times that I don't have the answer yet, I just have a knowing. I know that it's helping me. So I think as we're moving into this new phase, um, allowing it to happen versus getting even internally frustrated or upset about things, I think is going to really accelerate the process for us to all really experience deeper connection with one another and allow us to ascend into a higher level of consciousness. And I think that the more that we can just be open to that, I think we're going to just really start to enjoy life a lot more because that's really what we're here for. It's all about joy. It's all about deepening those relationships. And so whether you're looking at money or you're looking at health, just know that there's always places where we can be grateful for now and what we have now. The fact that, you and I are sitting upright on our own and we have the ability to speak and we have the ability to see each other and hear each other. Those are all things that we can say, thank you so much for that ability that we have. And we both have a roof over our head and we both have internet connection, and all of that shows that we are prosperous in that way. And the more that we let go and recognize that we're temporary guardians of anything in our life and release this idea of ownership, and instead recognize that when we release this idea of ownership and think of it as a temporary stewardship or guardianship, that everything is ours at our disposal when we need it.
Mm,
And I think those two things can really carry us forward in a very high vibrational place.
mm, thank you. And hence, you run Profit for Keeps and Profit for Joy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, for your heart, for your intention, for the ways in which you have a ripple effect in the world, and for the ways in which you support other people who then have a ripple effect in the world. Yeah, so good. And I appreciate you. I think we met, I think 2019 or 2020, and our paths have woven and just touched little bits and pieces. And I'm leaning in and would love more time with you as a friend and as a woman and as a light carrier.
Mm. Well, Maraya, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for creating this space for people to really tap into their own inner wisdom and to feel more intimately connected with their body. I think the work you're doing is phenomenal, and I'm very grateful to you. So thank
Mm,
you for having me.
thank you. And for everyone listening, I honor you for your time. We all have choices with how we spend our time. And we've just shared time and energy and frequency together, which means we've shared intention, and a rising tide lifts all boats. So thank you for the sharing. Until next time, cheers to each of and every one of us having prosperity in our health, our wealth, and our love. Until next time.
Cheers.
Ciao, ciao.